Today, we're digging into the latest earnings report from a biotech company called Absci. But this isn't just about the numbers, right? We're talking about two huge things colliding: the power of generative AI and a potential fix for a problem that affects millions and millions of people. So let's get into it. So let's just get right to the big question that's at the heart of Absci's latest update. Could AI actually cure baldness? I know it sounds a little like science fiction, but it's the real-world promise behind their top drug candidate. And it's exactly why so many people are paying close attention. And you better believe the financial stakes are massive. Absci figures that an effective, long-lasting treatment for pattern hair loss could be a market worth over $25 billion every single year. That's an absolutely staggering number, and it turns what some people see as just a cosmetic issue into a huge commercial opportunity. All right, so let's get to the main event. The star of the show in Absci's latest report is their lead drug, a molecule called ABS-201. And this is where the story gets really, really interesting. So this drug, ABS-201, what is it? Well, as you can see right from their press release, it's being developed for androgenetic alopecia, which is, the fancy scientific name for very common male and female pattern hair loss. The big takeaway here is that they're making real, tangible progress in their clinical trials. So here's the really important part. This isn't just a theory anymore. The drug is now officially being tested in people. In their ongoing headline trial, the first few groups have already gotten their doses. And so far, so good. The company's saying it's been well tolerated and that the early safety data looks favorable. For any new medicine, that's the first massive hurdle you've got to clear. Okay, so the big question is, how does this thing actually work? I mean, what makes it any different from the foams and pills that are already out there? Well, it all comes down to a very specific target in our biology. The target is something called the prolactin receptor, or PRLR for short, and this is where the science gets really cool. Absci's research suggests that by blocking this receptor, they can do way more than just, slow down hair loss. They believe they can actually kickstart new growth by regenerating the very source of the hair follicle, its stem cells. And this slide just lays out the potential difference perfectly. Think about it. On the left, you've got what we have now, pills or topicals you got to use every single day, forever. On the right, that's Absci's goal for ABS-201, a long-lasting, maybe even multi-year effect from just a couple of injections over 6 months. I mean, that's a total game changer, shifting from a daily chore to a potential long-term solution. Yeah, really think about what this means. We're not just talking about keeping the hair you've got. The goal here is to literally rebuild what's been lost. True regeneration. I mean, if they can actually pull this off in humans, it would completely change the paradigm for how we treat hair loss. So, who is this company trying to pull off this potentially revolutionary idea? This is where the whole AI part of the story really comes into play. See, Absci isn't your typical pharmaceutical company. Nope, they call themselves an AI-native drug creation company. So what does that even mean? Well, their whole mission is to take the same kind of generative AI that's creating images and writing text and point it directly at medicine. So instead of designing a picture, their AI is designing a brand new drug. The big idea is to make that incredibly slow, super expensive process of drug discovery way faster, way cheaper, and hopefully way more successful. And they're not just talking a big game, they're putting some pretty impressive numbers out there. Just listen to this from the founder and CEO, Sean McLean. He said they've taken their first couple programs from an AI design to human trials in about 2 years for around $15 million. Now compare that to the industry standard, which is more like 4 to 6 years and $50 million or more. That is a massive, massive difference. So how do they actually do it? Well, it's basically this cool 3-step loop. First, their AI models design new antibody drugs from the ground up. Then, and this part is key, they immediately take those digital designs and create and test them in a real-world wet lab. Finally, all the data from those tests gets fed right back into the AI, helping it select the absolute best candidates to move forward. It's this really powerful cycle of designing, building, testing, and learning.
Okay, but let's not forget, this was an earnings report, so we got to talk about the money. Let's do a quick financial health check on the company and see how they're doing.
So if you just glance at the surface, the headline numbers for the fourth quarter, well, they weren't great. The company missed Wall Street's expectations on both earnings per share, that's EPS, and on revenue. But, and this is a big but, for a company at this stage, these numbers really aren't the whole story. Yeah, this is probably the most important thing to understand about a company like Absci. Look, they're not trying to make a profit right now. That's not the goal. all their value is tied up in the potential of the drugs they're creating. So what really matters are two simple questions. One, are their clinical trials moving forward? And we've seen they are. And two, do they have enough cash to get the job done?
And that brings us to what might just be the single most important number in this entire report. Absci says it has enough cash to fund everything it's doing all the way into the first half of 2028.
This is what people in the industry call a cash runway, and it's so important. It basically means the company is financially stable enough to keep all their research going and hit those next big data readouts without having to run back to investors and ask for more money anytime soon. It gives them critical breathing room. All right, so let's wrap this up. What's next? What should we all be watching for? Well, Absci gave a pretty clear roadmap for what to expect with their hair loss drug. Okay, you might want to mark your calendars. In the first half of 2026, we're going to see the initial safety and PK data. That's basically how the drug moves through the body. But then, the second half of 2026, that's when we get the first real peek at whether it's actually working, the early hair growth data. That's going to be a huge moment. After that, they plan to start another trial for endometriosis, and then in early 2027, we should get the full, complete hair growth data. Lots to look forward to. And that really brings us to the final, bigger picture. You know, this story about ABS-21, it's about so much more than just hair loss. It's a test case for a whole new way of making medicines. And it leaves us with this massive question. If generative AI can really design a treatment for a condition this common and this complex, what's next? What other problems could it solve? Something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.